This week on Barbell Shrugged, we talked to Paul Nobles of Eat to Perform, and he says,
"Screw your abs."
Don't forget that part.
now we're ready.
You should check on that.
We're recording.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe here with Doug Larson and Chris Moore as our
We're co-hosts.
We're back
co-hosts.
together, gang.
We're back together.
The band's
last
back
3 episodes
together.
we weren't. We have our guest Paul Nobles from Eat to Perform. He runs a website and where they talk about nutrition and performance. It's going to be pretty cool to have a
This will be a good
conversation
one.
with today. He's been hanging out this weekend. We've had a ton of really great conversations, and I can't wait for you guys to hear some of it. Real quick, first, make sure to go to barbellshrugged.com, sign up for a newsletter so we can update you on all the stuff that we got going on. Quick update, we have, for those of you that haven't been paying attention, we've been doing a weight gain challenge the last 3 months. Or 2 months now, and these guys have been getting some incredible results. Everyone's hitting PRs on their lifts, snatch, clean jerk, squats, back and front squat.
The latest impressive lift was dude who blew up a 405 front squat. What's his name? Josh?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but we
I
had a guy.
think-
we had a-
did he just post it yesterday or something?
yeah, he crushed it.
You mean his
and-
real name? He has a fake Facebook name.
Really?
No, that's
That's
a different guy.
Oh,
Anyways,
anyway,
it doesn't matter.
a lot of guys are really impressing the shit at me.
Everyone in that group officially knows we have no idea who anyone is now.
Well, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, we're just looking at names all day long, but the results across the board are like people are really realizing that, well, I could really be strong doing this.
Yeah, I mean, there's 50 people in the group. Like I can't remember the weight for
God
each
bless
person.
each one of them. They're our children.
But a lot of guys are making really good results. You can go if you go look in the shop on barbellshrugged.com and you look at the weight gain challenge, the 26 pounds in 26 weeks. You can actually see the testimonials of the guys. We had some guys just give us testimonials that have been doing it for 2 months, and they've got 4 more months to go, and they've already got really impressive results from just 2 months of training.
I'd say on average, each person has increased their snatch, clean jerk, and or front squat between 10 and 30 pounds.
Well, one guy
All
just
of them.
yesterday said, I had this goal in mind that at the end of 6 months, I would hit this lift, 315 squat or whatever it was, and he's already done it. I was like, well, shit. Well, how far can I go in another 4 months?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in 8 weeks.
So we've got that. We're actually that's been really successful. So we've decided to launch it again. We were thinking about launching it in October, but we've had so many people sign up for the one that's going to be coming out in October. They were like, well, we should probably just launch it this month.
Yeah,
So
we
we're
got
gonna
like over 200 people on that waiting list.
Yeah,
we're only letting like 50 people in the program.
Yeah. So we're only letting so many people in. So that one's going to go on June 3rd, Monday. So if you're listening to this, that has been open for 2 days now, so you better hurry up and get signed up. Hopefully you're on our newsletter list, because if you were, you would know about this. But get signed if you're interested in putting on 26 pounds in 26 weeks and increasing your lifts while not losing your cross fitness. You can sign up for that class or that challenge, and you can sign up starting now. And it's going to start in July. What's the day that it's going to? July 8th?
8th, I think.
Yep, July 8th is going to start. The sooner the better, too. I know that one of the reasons we started the weight gain challenge and it being 6 months long, originally when we did it, it was right after the Open, was so that guys could get big and strong, and then that way they could start tapering back towards the Open. So the sooner you get on this program, the sooner you're going to be a more competitive CrossFitter. So
Yeah, you might be able to roll it over until next year's competitive cycle.
yeah, don't put it off. The sooner you do this, the better, for sure. So,
Take action. Don't think. Act.
exactly. All right, so, and don't forget, check out our Facebook page, and you can follow us on Twitter at Barbell Shrugged. We do a daily BS where we answer very specific questions, and that's on the website as well, so don't forget to check all that out. So we're here with Paul Nobles, Eat to Perform. How did you get started with your website and advising people on how to eat differently, and why did you do it? Because there's so many people out there already
Why
telling
eat to
people
perform?
how to eat, but you think that maybe you guys are giving better advice.
Well, the emphasis of what we do is basically trying to get athletes to eat like athletes. And when we first started, I'd actually been counseling people for somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3 years. About 3 years ago, went to the University of Minnesota trying to get a degree related to nutrition. Already have a 4-year degree. And I was sitting there talking to the woman who, great gal, but, not performance focused.
Traditional academic mindset.
Well, yeah, but
Probably.
she, as we were sitting there talking and she's asking me why, I want to go down this path. And I was like, well, I need initials because otherwise I'm not going to really have any credibility. And she started just kind of talking to me like, why do you think that? And
It was about 3 years ago.
yeah, and so I said, well, let me give you an example of what I think you should do, And so we started talking. The conversation probably went for about 2 to 3 hours. And she's like, dude, you do not need us. You could teach here. The long story short, you should write a book. People will recognize real. And
Wow, great advice.
yeah, and at that point, I had a group called Lean U. Right now that, Eat to Perform sort of taken over. I mean, we have 215,000 likes on Facebook, which is more than the CrossFit Games page.
How did you do that? It's
yeah.
amazing.
Well, hopefully we
That's
talk about
incredible.
it, Mike.
yeah, well,
You asked that
The
question.
incredible
Mike.
part, you guys have only had that page up for a couple months.
we started February 12th. The first video we put up was the video of Neil Maddox eating a donut every day.
Yeah.
And the initial, Mike and I were talking about this a little bit where
So far, I like that diet plan, by the way.
yeah, well, kind of the vision that you have going in ends up being different as you cater to your audience. And what I was really just trying to get across to people was that you need to have some level of carbohydrate to fuel your athletic goals. And I'd say it was probably 3 weeks in before I realized that, we had all the sugar addicted people, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But about 3 weeks in, just a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, everybody's under eating. Everybody is under eating. And my background and the way that I counsel people is related to body fat testing and just kind of getting specific. Formerly, I was a professional poker player. And so, data is really, really important, as it relates to kind of finding trends. And so as I got healthy, that's how I got healthy, was basically just trying to track everything. I had been, on the diet roller coaster, much of my life, ended up hypothyroidism, all these other types of things. And I said, well, what I didn't understand at that point was the whys. Why am I fat? Why do I have no energy? Why, what could you figure out if you started to analyze trends? And one of the things that I see in your gym, you guys have a scale in your bathroom. There's an allergy to scales for some reason right now. And I just don't understand why you wouldn't have some level of accountability, maybe is one way to say that.
I agree with that.
But in general, tracking the trends started to show me, I'd had some success with low carb, but you basically just empty out your cells, and then pretty much the minute you start bringing back in the stuff that you really want to eat, now all of a sudden your fat cells end up and you're on a roller coaster. And so once I started to figure out that you could actually cycle that a lot quicker, and have, I know you have one question lined up, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But, if I knew that I could just occasionally do low carb and then, keep my metabolism rolling, keep my muscles filled and things of that nature, and that would allow me more energy, performance, and whatever, it'd be pretty enlightening. I think the good majority of people, if they understood that, carbohydrates come with a level of inflammation tax. Mm-hmm. And so if you just occasionally, eat less carbohydrate, and one of the things, I talk a lot about carbohydrate, and people have a problem with that because they think that, the panacea is 75 grams of carbohydrate a day, or even 30 grams of carbohydrate.
Too many rules, too many demonized words. People are losing sight of what matters.
Yeah, I don't believe that you should view foods as bad. I think that in the end, that ends up with a less enlightenment. And, the more you can find out about the food that you have in your body and what it does for you, the better. And so we talk a lot about testing. Chris and I were having a conversation about that. I mean, in general, you want to have some understanding of food. You want to have some understanding of tracking trends and what it does for you and how your performance.
I was going to say about the trend thing. The coolest thing about the weight gain challenge is that people come in a little unsure. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be eating all this stuff. I don't want to get fat, bro. Mm-hmm. We go, well, all that, natural emotions. You go, here's what we're going to do. And Doug does it brilliantly. Like, look, you're going to plot your weight every morning. You're going to see some spikes. You're going to see some valleys. But all that shit that sways your emotion doesn't matter because you're going to see this little trend line. Here's where you want to be. Here's where you are. And you look, 2 weeks into it, 4 weeks into it, I'm gaining weight. My snatch is up 15 pounds. I'm not getting fat. So being accountable and tracking it and seeing it for yourself is the proof. You wake up every morning seeing proof that what you're doing is the right thing.
Yeah, visual displays of information really help kind of damper the emotions.
Yeah, you can do the same. You can do the same with your snatch or your squat or your deadlift. Like, see what's happening. This new thing you're experimenting with. See if it's having the effect you want. Don't go on assumption, and don't have the attitude where you walk into a gambling hall and say, "I'm going to roll the dice. Let me see if I get lucky. Let me try this thing." That's not what these professional gamblers are doing. They have a science in place. They're seeing what works. They're taking away what doesn't. They're keeping what's effective. This is the kind of attitude you need to have no matter what you're doing, man. Mm-hmm. So it's brilliant so far.
Yeah, I think that calories don't matter. Data doesn't matter. I just don't agree with that. I mean, I think that what you should try to do, we have a calculator. I'll talk a little bit about that. And, about 3 weeks in, I started realizing that everybody was under eating and didn't.
So when you say everybody, you mean specifically CrossFit, like performance athletes? You're not talking about general population. You're talking about people 100%. That are trying to compete.
Oh, 100%. I mean, at the time, I was basically working with CrossFit athletes. Okay, and
I think I've recognized that with a lot of athletes, and I've done it myself as well. It's like everyone gets on the paleo bandwagon. Everyone gets on the paleo bandwagon, and all of a sudden you cut out all these carbs because a lot of people associate that with being low carb.
Yeah.
The only carb they may be getting is that sweet potato after they train or something like that, and it's just not enough for the volume of training they're doing. And, I've seen a lot of athletes in the last year switch from, hey, it's okay, eat some grains, eat some rice, eat some more, there's a lot of things out there you can eat that donut, crush some ice cream once a week.
You have to exercise. You have to exercise the shame. You got to get the shame out of it. Like, oh man, I ate that bowl of ice. I ate that potato too many. Right. I feel like a whore now. You're not a whore, man. You're getting better. Like, just trust this for just a second.
Yeah.
Let go of this emotion and fear.
Lose the guilt.
I've seen a lot of athletes switch over to a higher carbohydrate. People who train hard and high volume, and they've seen a lot of benefits. And a lot of them are like, oh, my training's going better. And a lot of times they don't even attribute it to the nutrition, but I can see that as a huge change for them.
Well, let me give you a couple examples, okay? One regional competitor I was working with, he's not like, CrossFit Games guy, but, he wants to be more competitive, gym owner. And, he reached out to me early on. And he was doing like a zone approach. And by the way, I don't have any hate for zone or paleo or anything like that.
It's fucking stupid, man. Well, how many strawberries I got to eat? Like this whole fucking tray of strawberries. How many blocks? 18. What? Well, none of it ever makes sense.
You have the zone, and then you have what people have turned the zone into.
Yeah, I think
there's certain people out there.
What's the difference, man?
Well, there's people who read the zone and go, deli meat and strawberries every fucking meal. It's zone.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done it before. I'm
Sounds
like,
me.
I'm going to eat zone. So
Yeah.
for every time I drink 3 beers, I've got to get 6 ounces of protein
It's
and
just-
so much fat. And
God, I hate that
mean,
kind
you-
of way of
you-
thinking. That's
but-
how you're going to live your life, is walking around every day
You-
But I'm
counting
pretty
blocks.
sure Barry Sears wasn't thinking, oh, you know what? Beer, deli meat, and and almonds is going to be so good for people.
Well, and that's
but it's what people turn zone into that's stupid.
Well, that's the way they sell Weight Watchers for men, right? Is basically what they're saying is.
By the way,
you can eat.
if you're a
nachos
man and you listen to Weight Watchers, you got a problem. Bigger than diet.
I agree with
Your
that.
your ass needs to go ride a motorcycle or something.
I mean, in the end, the only way that you're going to end up, anything close to what you want with Weight Watchers is consistently eating at a really low calorie number, and
Can you imagine sitting in a
gonna be the
restaurant,
best.
right? You got a beer, you got a fucking steak in front of you, beautiful steak. You're like, let me see here. How many points is this here steak? You're on your life just shot off in a wrong trajectory.
Yeah, I think my blog used to be called Your Diet Sucks, and what I was trying to get across at that point before we decided, maybe Eat to Perform is a little bit better, less harsh way.
They're both
of
pretty
saying
good.
that. But what was happening, like for instance, in the case of this athlete, he had his own number set. He was a 220 pound man. Had his own number set, at about 22 to 2,500 calories. And I just basically did some math for him. We put him, I think we were at like 4,000 calories. He went from 220 to 225 to about 212 in, I'd say, 10 days, because he already had the muscle. He already had the metabolic functioning. He just needed to wake it up. And that's, even, we do a lot of work with Elizabeth Akinwale. It's kind of interesting with Elizabeth because, no one can take credit for Elizabeth. I mean, Elizabeth takes credit for it.
Freak
In
athlete.
fact, and, I do want to say that, like, I hate before and afters where the diet author is kind of putting it out there like that person would not have gotten there without me. I think that's total bullshit because the people are putting themselves under the weight. The people are, doing the program. In a lot of cases, for me, where I'm telling people to eat a little bit more and then just eat less occasionally, mentally it's sort of difficult, especially for, women, which is the majority of my clientele, or the people that we work with. It's sort of tough to get there mentally. And, but we have now, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 Science Lab members, 900 really active members. We get the occasional Dougs in the group. We get the occasional, oh my God, I'm up 3 pounds, and
That's me.
That's you, Doug?
That's me in the group.
yeah. And, but we had actually,
What about my abs?
we had,
What is the Science Lab group? What is that?
Science Lab is,
Sounds cool.
So is this a membership option on your website? Is that right?
well, basically we sell metabolic flexibility for high intensity athletes. And so, I know one of the questions was
Sounds
about,
fancy.
yeah, it
That
is.
sounds fancy.
It is fancy.
I should have thought of that name.
No,
Too late,
So
asshole.
that's the name for how you guys structure your way of eating.
yeah,
And everyone thinks you guys do carb backloading, which isn't quite the same thing.
no. In fact,
Maybe real quick, talk about carb backloading and then talk about metabolic flexibility. How they're the same, how they're different, and then
Well,
kind of
let-
why you guys choose to do it the way you do.
And how many donuts are involved?
yeah. Well, that's
We
up
should
to
eat
you a
donuts
little
during
bit.
the show.
Yeah.
But like just to kind of get back to the Science Lab part, you basically become a Science Lab member, or you have the option to be in the group, and what that allows you is to talk to me, Mike, Julia. We have basically about 8 team leaders in the group, and we deal with a lot of women, and the book is you're going to load most of your carbohydrate around your workouts. We have all the various scenarios and meal planning and things of this nature. And the real nice thing about it is it's very CrossFit. We wrote the book specifically for, CrossFit, Olympic lifting, and powerlifting. And so how it differs from carb backloading, it's a lot more flexible. Carb backloading, when I initially started talking to Mike. Mike has done, various work pretty much every weekend. Mike is, Mike Nelson. He presents at some conference with a bunch of nerds, and and they all do their nerd thing. But Mike,
no offense, nerds, we love you.
Yeah,
we're
right.
Nerds sometime.
I'm most certainly a nerd.
It's the best thing to be in life.
Yeah. You run a group called the Science Lab.
Yeah, for sure. So we appreciate data. We appreciate an understanding of yourself, and we appreciate testing. And
results, man. That gives you the results. That's what everybody appreciates in the end, isn't it? Let's be real here.
Yeah.
Get some results for yourself.
I agree. I think that when we talk about carb backloading, we started selling carb backloading as one of our first books. I talked to Mike about, it's kind of difficult. You're talking to the person that's considered to be the authority on metabolic flexibility. And so I'm like, hey, man, you and I have been cool for a couple years. I've been following your work all along. I really think that, we should try and figure out something. He's like, yeah, I don't know how much of an audience there is for what you're doing. And so, we ended up touching base afterwards. But in that initial conversation, I said, well, I'm thinking that carb backloading will be where I'll start. And even though it has like gaping holes where it's not specific for CrossFit, I mean, Kiefer talks about it in the book that it's not written for CrossFit.
Yeah, he wrote it for powerlifters and strongman competitors primarily.
Yeah, and so like if you're trying to squat 1,000 pounds, it's a real good fit for you. And I do think that some of the extremes that he talks about, where you're having 600 grams of carbs, around your workouts in the evenings, and then 30 grams of carbs for 2 days, that's not something that I think sets up metabolically real well for you. Flexibility.
Too extreme on either side.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary. I'd say if you looked at the way that we do it, it probably comes out to an average of about the same thing. Mike, the majority of Mike's clients weren't CrossFit, type people, and it's been pretty enlightening for Mike, to see. Because the way that he counsels people is to have most of their carbohydrate. Most of them are truthfully looking for like a deficit approach, and that really isn't what we teach. We're teaching mostly, you want to be eating close to your total daily energy expenditure most of the time. That's going to set up real well for muscle maintenance, muscle building, and then if you eat it less occasionally, then that's going to set you up for better fat loss. And, Doug, you talked about that a little bit with your experience related to DEXA and some of the fighting stuff. And I think that sets up real well to exactly what we're talking about. So can you talk about that a little bit?
The other day I was talking about MMA and how when I was cutting for MMA, I usually go from like 200, 205, and then I cut down to maybe like 187, 185, and then I would water weight cut down to 170. And like in that 6-week period where I go from 205 to 185-ish, I'd lose body fat wise from about 13% down to about 6.5% based on the DEXA scans that I got.
And looking damn good when you do it, I'll tell you.
That's right, keeping my abs. And you're saying that most CrossFit athletes, if they're super lean all the time, won't perform that well.
Yes.
And I totally agree. If you're trying to be incredibly lean, then you're not going to perform as well as if you're just not quite that lean. You can still look good and still be a pretty trim person. If you're 10% body fat or 12% body fat, you're still going to look pretty good. You're still going to have abs.
You're not
but
in the danger
you're not
zone.
shredded.
Yeah.
And you're going to perform better having a little bit more body fat. And certainly for me, as an MMA fighter, I performed better when I was right around 195, 200 pounds with a little more body fat. I felt better. I was better conditioned. In my case, as an MMA fighter, it's a little bit different because I'm trying to get into a weight class where compared to the other 170s, I'm bigger and stronger, and more importantly for me, I'm actually taller.
Yeah, because if you fight guys who are cutting down from fucking 230 to get to 205, and you're naturally going to go. You're going to get your ass beat by that guy, right?
Yeah, at 170, I'm bigger and stronger than pretty much everyone I fight. And again, for me, as a person who excels more at grappling and has more trouble with boxing, like with taller athletes that can punch me from farther away, that gives me a lot of trouble. And so I like being the taller athlete. And at 170, I'm taller than the guys that are 185. So
right,
Strategy.
but so at 170, as an example, what would you say is the percentage of your athleticism or performance? Like, you're probably not 100% as an example,
No.
but you already have a genetic advantage over your opponents, and so it allows you to perform well without necessarily being a comfortable weight for you.
Yeah, I'm definitely only like 80 or 85% as strong, like measurably strong. Like my deadlift will go from over 500 down to 450 or 440 for a couple of weeks while I'm cutting down, and
Which is still way
for the
more
week
than
or two
those dudes are deadlifting who are naturally floating around that weight. I mean, you're still
Right.
a surplus
Exactly.
of benefit there.
Yeah, at 170, there's a bigger discrepancy in strength between me and the other guys compared to if I just stayed at 185 and then just made that cut from 205 to 185. So that's why I do it. I like having that bigger discrepancy. But being super lean, I'm not as athletic. So for CrossFit, where weight, it's not a weight class sport, it doesn't necessarily matter if you are lighter and leaner. It's nice to look good, but you probably will perform better if you eat more carbs. You carry a little bit more body fat,
But see,
and
the
you're not
problem
super
with-
shredded all the time.
The problem with that is that, I have visible abs at 15%, and so I think people get in their head that they need to be 8% or 12% or something of this nature. And that is where actually I think some of the body fat testing sort of goes the wrong way. That's why I like your 26-day challenge, is because,
Did you get a buzz?
on the
I've got a buzz, but it ain't from the machinery, man.
well, that party yesterday was pretty crazy.
Yeah,
So I'm thinking Doug's at least feeling a little bit of that yesterday. But yeah, like as an example, the one thing that I always point out, and we have an article about this, and people constantly give me heat. A lot of people really respond well to the article. It's why CrossFit athletes shouldn't aspire to be shredded. And when I say shredded, I mean you're not going to hit the podium at 4 to 5%. Nobody has. And when you look at Khalipa, when you look at Rich Froning, I think people think that Rich Froning is shredded. Well, if Rich Froning were to show up at a bodybuilding competition, you would know he's not shredded. But would you be happy looking like Rich Froning? I sure as hell would.
He's okay.
Yeah. Which, by the way, when
He
those
does
bodybuilders
fine.
are on stage, they look great, but those guys are like struggling to stand up when they're on stage. Like
Right.
they are not at their best performance
Well-
in their best
Well,
performance
they can't.
state. They're
The crazy thing
they're super
I see
dehydrated.
about those guys, like the whole story of like where, if you knew the pain they were in when they're on stage, like when they don't even have any feet in the soles of their underneath their feet, like the natural fat padding so you can walk comfortably with these bones in your feet is gone, and now they're struggling just to walk around.
Well,
it's,
and
it's a
then-
fucking terrible
They
existence.
feel like shit, but they look great.
That's why I say bodybuilders are, for everything crazy about their lifestyle, are the most committed people I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my
This
God.
is torture. You're trying to kill yourself.
It's absolutely a 24-hour job.
And it's pretty well documented that these people are shortening their life. I mean, when you're a chronic dieter, it's not favorable as it
But
relates
see,
to health.
you're losing your point, man. You gotta. It's okay to look huge and shredded in a coffin. This is all that matters. We gotta be fucking huge and shredded. And if I die at 32, that doesn't matter because I'll live forever in the minds of these meatheads who don't give a shit about anything but being huge. That's the mentality. That's crazy.
Well,
but-
Julia Ledusky
I think
is
bodybuilding's cool as shit as long as you
It
know what
is.
you're doing and why you're doing it.
And,
Well,
and,
but
and maybe
that's
hit
your
it
goal.
hard,
That's
hit it
cool.
hard, and live it, and then get out of it when you feel like your bodies can't tolerate it anymore. Like get the experience and get out.
But Julia Ledusky is our powerlifting coach.
I know her. Yeah.
She's actually pretty well thought of in powerlifting, and she actually just finished 2 physique competitions. She sort of talks about
She got a couple kids now too, right? So
yeah. She looks great. I mean, and she does our women's classes with me. And the reason why I have her as the leader for us is because I believe in getting strong. And her coach is John Meadows. I don't know how well you guys know John Meadows, but John.
No,
I'm not familiar, John.
Yeah, John takes the famous saying from John is that, you keep the muscle in that you're earning around your workouts, and then you use the other 22 hours a day to burn fat. And that doesn't perfectly describe what we do, because I'll just talk a little bit about how I do my workout. I mean, for a lot of people that look at me and go, well, you're not super jacked. I don't know that I want to be that guy. Well, I think that you have to be realistic about what someone knows compared to, a lifetime of training. I mean, I've only been lifting weights for less than 2 years, and so, what that will look like in 5 years, 10 years, I think will be probably.
You got to be careful anyway with like picking coaches and advice based on ability, because my all-time hero. CTP will nod his head with this. My all-time hero is Michael Jordan.
I thought you were saying CTP was your all-time hero.
He's my homeboy. But when you look to people for advice, you got to keep in mind, like Michael Jordan was. If I met him, I would like fall on my knees and cry. Like when I was a kid, this guy was God. Like I watched the Bulls play every day, man. This guy's the best that could ever be, and he still is. Don't try to bring this LeBron James shit into it. It's Michael Jordan. The point is, he's the best at what he did for all time, and a really shitty coach and like GM when it comes to trying to give advice about how to build a team, because what he did didn't translate. So when I think about advice and who can give it, like you gotta be like, somebody has a great pearl for you, and they could be just a guy who's like, I just been doing this and something seems intuitive and beautiful for me. You should listen to me. If you want to get advice from like Rich about how to be rich, I don't know if that works out. Like you gotta keep your mind open and kind of survey everybody who can give you great advice. And somebody who is struggling in your CrossFit gym who just said, look, this clicked for me. I had this beautiful thought. They can be what gives you the greatest advice. And they can just be a beginner who's been doing it and they're still struggling with weight, but they have something to teach you too, man.
Well, I would say that, anybody looking at me and going, well, I don't want to be like that dude. I mean, you could also go, I train or, work with some of the highest CrossFitters, in the sport. And, most people would want to be those people, and the reality is that you have to be able to take kind of, bits and pieces. But, I'm a little distracted because I want to get to two things that, we've sort of skipped over. But I think a lot of people miss their potential related to trying to attain abs. And I see a lot of young people, 21.
It's a distraction.
Yeah, 21-year-old men that are missing their athletic potential because they're way too focused on, the fat below their navel. And I talk about this quite a bit, is that you need to break up. This happens with a lot of women, but it happens with a lot of younger guys too. You need to break up with your dysfunctional relationship with your fat layer. And if you can do that, you'll probably end up lifting more. But
you'll probably still get plenty laid, right?
Right.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Isn't it Ripto that says like the first thing all dudes need to do is just go to 200 pounds?
Yeah.
That's the first thing any guy should do.
If you don't weigh 200, go to 200.
Go to 200 first, and then worry about everything else. Your performance will go up.
Well, I think we were talking about this earlier. Is I used to be much more caught up in my physique when I was younger, and I think that stunted my growth on a lot of.
But now you're married.
Performance.
Don't worry about that anymore.
I don't have to worry about it.
No big deal.
Sorry, Ashley.
You're
Sorry,
still.
Ashley.
She's
We
obligated
need
to
to
give you
apologize to
sex.
Ashley a lot more.
I know.
That's right.
Let's
in the eyes
apologize on behalf of Bledsoe.
I feel like that should just be
in
a
the eyes of
a
the
bumper to
Lord.
the show.
Yeah.
But once I started focusing on performance, and I kind of let physique take a back seat, what I found was my physique was probably better than ever.
Yeah.
And then because I wasn't so caught up with it, I was happy with it.
Yeah.
And so I was much more able to just focus on my training and my performance, and I was having a much better time with life in general because I wasn't like focused on the physique.
That ties in all this, like just being present now on what matters. Like, okay, I've got to do today, this workout. This is the most important thing I can do. I know what I should be eating. These long-term aspirations of where I want to get, you need to keep that in mind, and you need to measure where you're going and how fast you're going against that, then change as you get along because your goals could change.
Talk about this in your book.
I do.
It sounds like your book's called Progress, and this sounds like a talk on progress.
On progress.
Yeah, but it's this idea of not forcing the path. Like you get an idea where you start out or where you'd like to be, and now you're here. And you know the things that will take you in a good direction. But if you like say, I'm going to get abs no matter what, I'm just going to chase that, then that pulls you away from actually the direction you need to go. You're forcing yourself down a path that won't be important in the long run. Mm-hmm. But if you go where you need to go, you're going to get there anyway. Mm-hmm. But you might not get the result you want if you chase it hard.
Well, I think
unnecessary rabbit hole.
It's a rabbit hole.
Trying to eat for physique and then trying to eat for performance could be seen in a lot of people's mind as two different things. When in fact, if you're eating for optimal performance, it means you can train harder more frequently, and you're going to end up with that physique you want.
There's nothing more favorable to your metabolism than muscle. And the amount of muscle that you have and the amount of muscle that you're able to maintain. I think that if you wake up every single morning and go, I want to be 8% body fat, that will drive you crazy. But if you wake up, if you wake up every single morning and go, okay, my squat is 315, I'm going to try and get my squat to 355. That's motivating. Like, you wake up just thrilled about that every single day. I mean, recently, I took my deadlift from 420 to 507, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, what was the programming on that?" Everybody wants like a system. I said, "You want to know what the real system was? I put on 10 pounds." I said, maybe I'm limiting myself genetically. And so, I was 163. I think the day that I deadlifted, I was 175. I probably, it was a little watery at that point, but realistically, the weight made the biggest difference. And so
it's the easiest, most intuitive thing. Like, oh, I want to be stronger. Maybe I should put on a bunch of muscle because that makes me stronger.
Yeah.
No bullshit
Seems
program.
like it makes sense.
Well, okay, but
no bullshit telegraph program necessary, man.
Yeah, but
the complicated thing was not what you needed.
But see, you're making an assumption there that I gained muscle. I did not gain muscle. I mean, the idea that I gained 12 pounds of muscle in 3 weeks, that did not happen. It was really more of an approach. I'd say that starting sorry, my stomach, but
just puke, man. Just get it out. Get the hangover.
Just starting
we'll vacuum this later.
Yeah, the starting the at the time I was trying to fuel my workouts mostly at night. My workouts were pretty early, and so I kind of bumped my workouts to about 10, 11 o'clock, and then started to have a pre-workout drink, and was just finding right off the bat, and actually Elizabeth talked about this with me about 3 weeks ago, where she started to add some carbohydrates to her pre-workout routine in the morning, and she's found that her workouts, and if you've seen any of the workouts that she's done, she's won 4 out of the 5 events. I'm not saying that anything that, once again, I teach people to teach themselves, and they deserve all the credit. And, I think that if you're performance focused, it just allows you to get off of that deficit treadmill that everybody has been on for life, and CrossFitters are better about it in terms of the performance side of things. But what we've seen is that, just a small introduction of, getting specific. Like when Laura was on your show, you guys had talked to her many times about, you probably need to eat more. You probably need to eat more. You probably need to eat more. And
she was way under eating, man.
Yeah.
Majestically under eating.
Yeah. And so,
Majestic.
Yeah.
nothing that you guys had said to her really made a connection, because she's like, okay, I'll have a few more carrots. It's like, we're not talking about a few more carrots. We're talking about 1,200 more calories a day to fuel your performance. And then, shortly after that, she squats 280 at 110, and I think there is this fear that you're going to get fat. We had a gal in our group just post, I'm not real big into before and after pictures because I'm not real big into shaming type of stuff. Plus there's also women and men, and so that can get a little weird at times. But I did allow one the other day. I don't know if you saw the pictures of it or not, but the gal gained 6 pounds. You'd have thought she lost 30 pounds. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally the most dramatic, because most of the people that show up at my site, they're coming from a really carb restricted background. And, you know, there's two scenarios where you can see the biggest gains. One, you're new. You know, that's going to allow you to gain the most amount of muscle because you hadn't been activating that muscle for a long period of time. The other biggest gain is if you're coming from a very carb restricted background, because essentially your muscle is somewhere between 60 to 90% water at any given time. So the big magic of low carbohydrate diets is that you're just taking all the water out of your muscle. And so therefore you end up being a little weaker as a result. And, you know, you're not going to necessarily perform better from a strength perspective. There's maybe some arguments for...
If you're like me, you start getting the crippling tendonitis in your shoulders because you're being dumb. You don't realize how dehydrated you are.
Let's take a break real quick.
Yeah, let's
Sneak it in there, don't you?
You gotta pee or something?
he
does.
Speaking of hydration,
I
just
100%
jumped up.
do
I was
myself.
Like, I was like, should I cut him off or should I just leave?
Yeah.
like the most important thing is to think
Speaking
yourself.
of hydrated,
Let's put
I guess
your
you're taking
hand
a break.
in a glass of warm water.
I have a great Michael Jordan story.
Welcome back to TechniqueWOD. My name is Doug Larson from the Barbell Shrugged Podcast. You can find us at barbellshrugged.com. Today we're going to talk about hang power cleans. So I like hang power cleans for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you're newer to weightlifting and you have poor mobility for weightlifting, or if you just have bad leverage for weightlifting, if you're a taller person with a short torso and longer limbs, then doing a hang power clean is probably one of your better variations because you're actually going to be able to get into all the positions correctly. So if you don't know what a hang power clean looks like, it looks like this. Usually what I have new people do is just do a regular deadlift and then just bend over until the bar is right around mid-thigh, and then you can do your hang power clean from there. Right to here, and then you can drop. So you saw the hang position was basically me bent at the hip with a vertical shin and a slight bend at my knee, shoulders back, nice neutral straight spine, and then I just do my transition and my second pull, which is the explosive jump part, okay? The jump part is debatable whether you're supposed to be jumping or whatever. That's a style thing, but that's the second pull. Excuse me. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to break this down. We're going to break this down and show you the technique. Again, what I prefer new people to do is to do a perfect deadlift and then bend over into the hang position. I got the sneezes. Okay, so if you're a new person, you can do a regular deadlift, stand all the way up, and then you're going to keep that neutral spine and bend over just a little bit. You can see here in this hang position, the bar is right about mid-thigh, shoulders are back, but it's not touching me yet, okay? It's about an inch away from my legs, okay? One of the most common errors I see is that people, they start just like this with the bar touching their, right above their knee on their lower thigh. Okay, if the bar's touching you there, if I go do a regular clean and the bar touches me here, that's an automatic indication that I probably cut my first pull off too early and I'm going to end up with poor leverage on my second pull. The bar should never touch me down here. On a clean, it should probably touch me right around where my hands hang. So if I'm here and this with bent knees is my power position, the bar is going to touch me right here. If you're a person who does a hip clean where I stand and then I kind of row the weight into me just a little bit, it'll hit even higher. Okay? So you don't want to rest the bar. If I do a deadlift and then I bend over, I don't want to rest the bar on my legs. I want to have the bar floating right over my knee. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand a little bit and then push my knees under. So I stand and push my knees. I get right into this power position. I'm super heel heavy. The bar is touching my upper thigh, my shoulders back. I have good posture, and I'm balanced on my heels. And then from there, that's where I can try to jump and shrug and pull the weight up onto my shoulders, okay?
Again, I don't have to worry about, if I'm a new person, having enough mobility to get into a rock solid, good position all the way at the bottom. It's easier for me to do a deadlift than it is for me to get into a solid, clean position where my hips are lower, my ankles are bent more. Okay? Also, when I catch, it's easier for me doing a hang power clean to catch in this power position. I'm in a quarter squat, and I'm not having to catch all the way at the very bottom of my front squat. So it's a very easy movement to learn, especially for new people and people that lack mobility. I like it a lot. One of the other problems is that when you deadlift and then try to go back down into this hang position, kind of like I said before, a lot of people end up in an artificial position where if they're doing a full clean with a good bar path, the movement or the position that they're trying to mimic right here ends up not being the same because they didn't use a real bar path. They created an artificial position by bending over in that kind of slight RDL position, and they're out of position. So if that's you and you want to end up in a better position on your in your hang position, then a good idea is to do a stop clean instead. So I'm going to be here, I'm going to go through a perfect first pull, I'm going to rock towards my heels and stay bent over, and I'm just going to stop mid-thigh. I have a vertical shin, shoulders are back, I still have an upright torso, and then from here, I can transition. It's going to hit me, again, only on my upper thigh, and then I can jump shrug and I can catch it on my shoulders. Okay? So that stop clean would look like this. I'd be here, butt down, keep my posture, rock towards my heels, and then I pull and catch. So that's a variation that I like a lot because it doesn't put you in an artificial position. Cameraman, did I forget anything that we discussed before the start of the show?
Full clean.
The full clean. Yeah, we'll go over the full clean. It's basically the exact same thing. So if you want to do, again, a deadlift, and then I bend over, it's the exact same thing. I'm going to still shift and hit in the exact same spot. And then I just catch at the bottom of my front squat. Likewise, if I do a stop clean, I'm going to be here. I'm going to press my knees back until I get here, and then catch at the bottom of my squat. So I hope that helps with the hang power clean and the hang clean where I'm catching at the full position. A little lightheaded since I didn't warm up today. Don't be like me, always warm up, even when you're doing videos. So if you have more questions, you can always go to barbellshrugged.com, click the Ask a Question tab at the top of the page, and we can, there's a question on there, that says, what movements would you like to see on TechniqueWOD? Just fill in the movements you would like to see, and we can do a TechniqueWOD on it in the future.
If you like this video or any of our other videos, make sure to share it on your Facebook wall by clicking share, and then the Facebook icon, and then also like it. Thanks, Shrugged Dougs.
All right, we're back talking in the socks. This episode is brought to you by
Socks.
the TSA Sucks. Yeah, we were coming back from Florida, and those ass clowns fucking must have taken they went through my bag full of equipment, took everything out, supposedly put everything back in. We get back to Memphis, and we have no pop filters.
The little circular black thing that's usually in front of our face is actually very
so now
important.
We had to get creative, and these are my dress socks.
And he says they're clean.
They're working
They
perfectly
smell
well, by the way.
great. They smell
the same
great.
thing.
This is how often I wear dress socks, though. Like,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
a good point.
Very not ever.
Never.
Very kind of not ever.
Yeah. Even if I'm wearing a suit, I'm usually just barefoot.
Only
But-
when you're marrying somebody.
That's right. That happens once every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, so we're back here with Paul Nobles from Eat to Perform. We're talking about eating for athletic performance, and maybe trying to get away from the physique mentality that a lot of people have, and giving them some advice on how they can actually perform better and maybe forget about the six pack a little bit. And Doug, you were at a little bit more where you wanted to go with some of the questions you had.
Yeah, earlier we were talking about metabolic flexibility and carb backloading, and you never really touched on exactly specifically what each one of those were and how they're the same and how they're different. So for everyone that doesn't know what carb backloading is and what metabolic flexibility is, just give us a quick rundown of exactly like, just a few short sentences, sum it up and just tell us specifically what those two things are.
So basically with carb backloading, you're going to eat your carbohydrates before the day that you work out, okay? And so let's say that throughout the day, you're going to have mostly fats, proteins, and fibrous vegetables. That's where you're going to get in a lot of your micronutrients and your vitamins.
So we'll make it easy. We'll say you're eating paleo at that time.
Yep, you're eating paleo at that time. And so with carb backloading, you would then have just a shit ton of carbs, you know.
From basically any source, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
like that's actually the big appeal. You know, it really appeals to like 21-year-old dudes.
Sleeve of Oreo cookies, whatever. Just get the calories.
Exactly.
So when are you doing that though? When are you just crushing carbohydrates?
Probably in the window between, let's say, 6 and 10 o'clock at night. You know, which is usually pretty favorable for sleep. You know, because you're really full. Carbohydrates make you sleepy. Kiefer actually had a video up where he talked a little bit about having some fat before you go to bed, because a lot of times if you have that big...
Well, let's not get too sidetracked. So you're going to eat a bunch of carbohydrates at nighttime.
Yep.
And healthy fats, proteins, and fibrous vegetables the rest of the day.
Yep.
Is that every day? Or is that just days you train? Or how does that work?
Okay, so...
What does that program recommend that we do, very specifically?
Well, that program is meant for powerlifters, and so very specifically, what you're asking is something that isn't a great fit for CrossFit, and so the majority of the time you're going to be lifting 3 times a week, and then you're going to have 4 rest days, you know, and so on those 4 rest days, you're going to be eating 30 grams of carbohydrate, which, you know, once again, I mean, I'm not a proponent of carb backloading.
So on the rest days, you're not eating a bunch of carbohydrates. You're
Right.
eating a bunch of carbohydrates on the training days.
Yeah, and so, like, how many CrossFitters
Or
have 4 rest days?
The night before the training days.
Yeah. The idea of carb backloading is that you're actually, it sounds like you're eating them after you're working out, but it's actually setting up your workouts, right?
Okay.
So if I've got a heavy deadlift session at 11 o'clock the day after, the night before that heavy deadlift session, I'm going to crush these carbs. And then I've got a couple days off or a day off. I'll go back to the low carb, right?
Right. And so, like, you know, where it's similar to metabolic flexibility is we talk about loading your carbohydrates around your workouts, but we're much more moderate towards the carbohydrate. Like, for instance, for myself, you know, I'm probably 200 grams of carbohydrate, maybe 250 grams of carbohydrate. I load maybe about 100 to 150 around my workouts, and then I save about 100 for the evening. And if you're a power lifter and you're trying to squat 1,000 pounds and things of this nature, maybe you can get away with 600 grams of carbohydrate. Personally, I've not really seen a lot of people have a lot of success with that without getting some level of fat, you know, but then they come back with this carb night
Without
solution.
gaining some level of body fat, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they come back with this carb night solution because obviously at that point their metabolism and muscle is sort of fueled, and so they can kind of get some real good results. Our approach is a little different and a little bit more gradual in that, you know, we want your workouts to be fueled. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you load up your carbohydrates with carb backloading, and let's say that you work out at 6 p.m. the next day. Even though you had a lot of carbohydrates from the night before, you're not going to always walk into that 6 p.m. workout feeling 100%, you know, and you know, when I have tested carb backloading, my workouts did not always feel 100%. And, you know, they talk about that, that all your workouts aren't going to be great. Well, you know, if you're a CrossFitter, you want almost all your workouts to be great. And, I said the other day, I put out a picture and it said, if you don't feel strong, you're doing it wrong. And where our program would differ is if you were working out at 6 p.m., you'd have, probably 50 grams of carbohydrate and then 25 grams of protein right before that workout. And you'd walk into that session fueled. And I think, it's my experience, it's mainly the experience of the athletes that I work with, that if you work out fueled, you'll end up being better. And then, you know, when I do like my heavy deadlift sessions, or, you know, like tonight, I'll load up probably with white rice.
Right before your session?
This will be the night before my session. I'll work out about 10, 11 o'clock. And then tomorrow morning I'll have 50 grams of carbohydrate with 25 grams of protein. And then I'll do my big deadlift session. And oftentimes, and then I'll come back. It sort of depends on what my plan is for working out. Sometimes, you know, my wife wants to work out that evening. This is actually kind of an interesting thing that I do. Whenever I do a 2-a-day or anything like that, I always do the woman's weight. Because, you know, if, you know, I deadlifted, you know, I mean, most of my sets and reps are in the 400 range, you know, right now. And I'm a smaller guy than every one of you. You know, and so, you know, that's going to take something out of me. And so if I want to work out later that
deadlifts always do. They take a chunk
sure.
of you away when you do them.
And usually I do like some light assistance work, whether it be like, you know, on the hyper, or I do a lot of 3-pood kettlebell, just like power glute swings just to really activate my glutes.
So here, to make this as specific and easy to understand as possible, say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yep.
You're gonna work out on Tuesday afternoon.
Yep.
Walk us through what Monday looks like, what Tuesday looks like, and what Wednesday looks like for your diet and for your carbohydrate loading.
Well, I need to know. Well, first of all, you know, what we do is we walk people through, you know, how they feel, you know, and they're testing how they feel, you know.
Yeah, don't worry about them. Just tell how you do it. Just give a specific example. I know this is going to be perfect for everyone in every situation, but just give one specific example so everyone can understand.
Okay, if I'm doing CrossFit on Tuesday night, I'm not really loading all that aggressively. Because CrossFit doesn't put a demand on me quite the way that squatting 300 pounds would, or deadlifting in the 4s. And so, in general, I might just have like sweet potatoes that night. I usually have on Monday night.
Okay.
And then, you know, I have my coconut milk smoothie. You know, that's a big recipe on Eat to Perform.
Right
before you go to bed.
Yeah.
Right before I go to bed, yep. It gives me nice sleep. I also do Cocoon sometimes. I usually don't do the coconut milk smoothie and Cocoon. You know, it's just like a bad flavor option. And so, you know, that doesn't work out really all that well. My wife works out at 6 p.m. That was an adjustment for me because I don't really like working out at 6 p.m. But you know, she's my wife and I love her, and, you know, I kind of wanted to support her journey.
You're wise.
Yeah. You know, and so.
Okay, so Monday night, you're eating sweet potatoes. You have a smoothie before you go to bed, and then you're going to train on Tuesday. So what's Tuesday morning look like? What's Tuesday night look like? And what does Wednesday look like?
Tuesday morning, a lot of times almost every single time I'll fast. You're
fasting on Tuesday morning?
Yep. I won't eat till about noon, maybe 1 o'clock.
Black coffee and some water when you get up, maybe nothing
Pretty
else.
much. Yeah, I know you guys, you know, are really into bulletproof coffee, but, you know, I just go black coffee. You know, I do drink a lot of coffee. I will admit that. I mean, you know, coffee is an appetite suppressant. I'm pretty good, you know, kind of testing stress levels and things of that nature, so I don't think it adversely affects things too much there.
So you're all coffee in the morning, no real food. You're training at like 11 o'clock hour. Anything?
No. This is Tuesday night with my wife at 6 p.m.
Oh, okay. So all day you didn't eat much in that morning. What about during the day Tuesday?
Yeah. Okay.
Like, when's that first meal?
So that first meal is going to be. It's usually, you know, it's kind of legendary on the site. I eat, you know, a ribeye with a couple eggs, a lot. You know, grass-fed ribeyes. I thought it was kind of interesting. You're grass-fed.
When do you do that?
That's right around noon, 1 o'clock.
At noon on that Tuesday before you train.
Yep.
Okay.
And so, and then around, I'd say 3 o'clock, I've just found it really comfortable to have like a really good salad, which, you know, the base of the salad is usually something in the level of kale, chard, and spinach, and then various vegetables, some avocado maybe in there, but kind of far away from my training. So maybe like 2:30 to 3 o'clock, you know, something like that. And then I would say around 5 to 5:30 is when I'll have about 50 grams of carbohydrate with 25 grams of protein. I don't really need to fuel
You do that with Whole Foods right before you train?
No, I do not.
You do the shake?
Yeah, I do 50 grams of Vitargo and then 25 grams of Progenics.
So a 2-to-1 ratio.
2-to-1
of carb
ratio.
to protein.
Yep. Now I do bump that a lot. You know, we can talk about my protocol for deadlifts. It's a little different. But in general, for a 15-minute WOD, I don't need that much carbohydrate. You know, I certainly don't need 500 to 600 grams of carbohydrate, which is kind of, Kiefer's pretty honest about the fact that, he doesn't really have a lot of love for CrossFitters. He doesn't have a lot, it's not written for CrossFit. I think it's sort of interesting about it.
Okay, we're getting off track again. So,
Yep.
So Tuesday night.
Let's keep me on track.
Tuesday night,
Yep.
you train at 6. You had your pre-workout shake. What do you do after that? And then what do you do the next day?
Well, give me an example on what I'm doing.
So for you, if you did,
Well, let's
if you
do
did
thi-
30
let's do
minutes,
this.
30 minutes of strength.
Yeah.
Say you did 5x5 back squats and then you Metcon for 20 minutes with whatever random movements. Who cares? But just you did some strength and then some conditioning. It took you roughly an hour. Roughly what most people do at any random CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
Okay?
On
Just
Tuesday
some
night.
strength and some conditioning on Tuesday night, 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
You had pre-workout, 2-to-1 ratio, carbs to protein in a shake right before you train. And then
Yep.
what do you do afterward? And what do you do the next day?
Okay, so I'll set it up where it's really super favorable. So let's say that the next day I'm going to squat pretty heavy, doing like a Windler cycle or something of that nature.
No, we're not squatting the next day. You're going to squat on Tuesday night, 6 o'clock. and then what do you eat after that? And then what do you eat the next day if you're not training the next day?
If I'm not training the next day, that's easy. So I will have pretty similar Vitargo, Progenics type of drink.
Right after.
I'll have either coconut milk smoothie or cocoon before bed. Maybe some sweet potatoes. Certainly wouldn't load aggressively because the next day's a rest day and I don't need a lot of energy for a rest day. And so a rest day, I'm almost certainly going to fast on that day. Today, as an example, is a rest day. I have not eaten anything. I mean, you guys made me drink this bulletproof coffee and it's got me all jittery, but
Forced it on them.
yeah, but
We like to have our guests drugged up.
But normally, I'll use that as a eat less occasionally day, and that kind of keeps.
No, would you still do the little meat and the ribeye at lunch, or do you kind of just whatever occurs, like a little bit of food here, and then at night you're probably having maybe just paleo throughout that day.
I mean, it's low carb. I do low carb. On
So
those
after,
days.
It's
after you
intuitive.
trained on Tuesday night, you did a post-workout shake or no?
Yeah, I did. I always do like either a post-workout shake or a whole food option. So a whole food option, let's say I was working out the next day, might be steak with sweet potatoes. There's not a vast difference from what I've seen through my various tests and a lot of people in the Science Lab group, where carb sources are going to be vastly different. I don't think that people are getting fat because they're not loading within 30 minutes. If you're having a shake within 30 minutes, it's mostly because of convenience. The whole anabolic window. It's like, there is some science that's favorable to that, but it's real marginal. I mean, it's not going to be the big answer to the puzzle. The big answer to the puzzle is always amount, and it's always
Getting enough calories in some form, whatever is convenient for you, so you do it.
for sure.
If you want a meal, eat a meal. If you don't feel like eating, don't eat. Just drink.
Compliance is the biggest issue.
Yeah, and so like on a Wednesday, I'm going to fast. Mostly through the morning, eat, and that's a little bit of my lean gains background. It's just what I find convenient, honestly. I mean, it just makes things a little bit more intuitive for me. But the way that evening would set up on Wednesday is largely dependent on whether I'm CrossFitting or whether I'm lifting. But usually after a rest day, I want to lift. And I'm real big into Omega Wave, HRV testing, and just kind of checking all that in the morning. Stress levels.
Basically, you're checking. This thing's giving you a reading of your blood pressure. It's kind of trying to assess whether you're in a state of preparedness for lifting, right? And how well you're reacting, if your body's ready.
It is unreal. I mean, the changes that's made in my routine, I've gone from, working out 5 to 6 days a week, doing a lot of 2-a-days and things of that nature, to literally going to 4 to 5 days a week. I started using nasal strips, when I sleep.
I love those things, by the way.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
It pairs well with your French style.
That's right. I got my eye mask and my little nasal strips.
Aren't you a peach when you're sleeping?
Dude, if I can't breathe, those nasal strips are the shit. Like, they really magically make you be able to breathe.
Well,
sometimes I can't go to sleep at all because I can't fucking breathe. It keeps me up
Let's
all
get
night.
some
Those nasal
Barbell
strips.
Shrugged branded nasal strips. Shrug your face. Sleep with this.
Okay, so I'm going to force you into one more specific example. You
Yep,
just
go
said
ahead.
that you do 2-a-days. So
Sometimes.
if someone is
Very rarely.
you have before, so you have experience with it. So say someone's a games athlete, they are 4 weeks out from the CrossFit Games. They're doing 2-a-days, maybe 3-a-days, multiple days a week. So back to our first example: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You're doing doubles each of those days.
Yep.
What would you suggest someone who's doing a double on Monday, a double on Tuesday, and a double on Wednesday? How would they structure their diet throughout the day? They're not trying to gain muscle. They're not trying to burn fat. They're trying to just maintain weight and be as efficient as possible during the workout.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some of it's going to be based on feel, and I do happen to work with CrossFit Games athletes, and so it does allow me to have. We've written protocols on this. Our CrossFit Intraday article was written by myself, Mike Nelson, and Elizabeth Akinwale, and there were some interesting things about that. But in the 2-a-day protocol that I wrote, basically you're putting your carbs around your workouts. You're going to certainly up your energy levels for those days, and even if the scale ends up a little bit higher on that day, you're certainly much better off, with the workouts fueled. Now, certainly you're going to want to dial that in as you get closer to the event because you don't want to be super heavy. But I have athletes test that quite a bit where they know that their athleticism isn't being compromised by being up 2 to 3 pounds. A lot of times what they're finding is if they're up 3 to 5 pounds, it doesn't have a dramatic effect on, their muscle ups or
well, especially if they were a little bit deficient before. Like if you're a little too light and you gain a little extra, you're going to be golden.
Yeah, I mean, that has been one really enlightening thing. There is just such a big part of our community that believes in, clean eating. And, I'm finding that, with games athletes that they're not eating like athletes should eat, the way that they kind of lose what, they might have picked up in college or whatever, and then end up kind of falling into, this constant using your workouts to burn calories when, what we're trying to do is you go into your workouts where you're performing better, and then that's going to lead to more favorable adaptation. And in the end, you can always go back to that low carbohydrate approach. It is, that's the one thing that I want people to understand is that, I'm a big advocate of that occasionally, and I'm a big advocate of that if you know what you're doing on the other side of things. But what happens for a lot of people, and we sort of joke about it in the group because people start eating more correctly. I mean, there's a lot of different approaches that people take because a lot of people want to do it low carb, and you can't really do this super well low carb because that's not going to be favorable for protein turnover and things of this nature. But pretty much no one reads the documentation that we send to them. They just, started carb backloading. There was no support for it. Or they just started eating more, and then, they sign up for the Science Lab and they're like, help, and so we talk people down from the cliff a lot, I'm
going to talk you down from the cliff right now.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the original question.
Perfect.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, working out twice a day.
Yep.
10 a.m., 6 p.m. Specifically for you, as an example, I know the answer is always it depends, and there's a million different situations.
Yeah, I can do
what
that.
do you eat specifically for those 3 days?
Okay, for specifically, if I worked out at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m., I'd have probably 2 eggs, some bacon. I kind of talk about bacon being a condiment, not a real meat. Maybe like some.
Doesn't matter. It's sexy.
Yeah,
you must have it.
But maybe like some hazelnut butter. And usually I'm going to have that about 2 hours before. So I'll probably have that about 8 o'clock in the morning, and then. It does sort of depend on whether or not it's a strength thing at 10 a.m., but in general, it's going to be either 30 minutes before or an hour before, and this is also how I counsel my athletes, you're going to have some carbohydrate. Usually I take creatine. We talked about a little bit about, loading, aggressive amount of creatine. Some people do it, some people don't. I find it works well for me, but I'm not super concerned about, my gymnastic movements the way that, a CrossFit Games athlete might be. Then they're going to almost certainly have some level of carbohydrate post-workout, and usually probably in a meal, So, the best example would be Chipotle with rice, So they'll have Chipotle with rice after they work out, and then...
That's a restaurant?
Yes, Chipotle.
It's like a big burrito with a lot of meat and veggies and guacamole and rice with it. It's a big, just carby,
they want to be ready.
Delicious meal.
They want to recover from the workout that they put in earlier, and then have some, some energy going into their workout at 6 p.m. So where it does depend a little bit is normally you would have carbohydrate if you're feeling a little, your body's a little drawn, you don't feel 100% going into that workout. But the majority of people actually got enough carbohydrate from the Chipotle where they don't actually need any carbohydrate going into that workout. And so
going into the second workout of the day.
Going into the second workout. So that part is optional. And then post workout, you're going to have your standard 50 grams of carbohydrate, and then 25 grams of protein, and then you're going to set up your evening meal for your workouts the following day. A lot of it is you sort of what we do, like with the calculator as an example. People want to get like really super specific and counting calories and things like that. And I have no hate for that, but I think that you have to move, sort of like our conversation with the zone earlier, you have to move to more of an intuitive style of eating. And so if you're, if one of my athletes is sitting there feeling a little bloated, from, maybe excessive carbohydrate or the workouts that they didn't stress them in the way that they thought it would, there's just no reason that you would load a shit ton of carbohydrates that night going into tomorrow's sessions. In general, you want to be able to feel that out a little bit. And so I think that, having your carbohydrates around your workout, and a good amount of them around your early morning workout kind of sets up the evening to where it ends up being more intuitive. Is that helpful?
So basically what you're saying is if you're training, you should eat carbohydrates prior and post workout. And then if you're not training, you should eat low carb.
Yeah,
we're drilling down to the,
and
that's,
you should
that's
eat
the golden rule.
You should eat protein all the time.
Yeah, I would say.
And then you should dial in your carbohydrates intuitively. So if you feel good, then you should eat that. And if you don't feel good, maybe you should bump it or lower it.
I mean, people want to make this like super complicated. And I think one of the things that our system, I don't know that you would call it a system, but
an approach, philosophy.
An approach, it really is pretty flexible. I mean,
but calculator is just a good place to start. Kind of like zone
calculator,
is a good place to start. And then you should probably adjust from there.
Okay. The reason why I did the calculators is most people weren't aware of total daily energy expenditure. And so, we had a lot of people, we talk about the sugar addict thing that keeps coming up, but,
tell the story.
But I'll tell the story right after this. But we had a lot of people that I realized that everybody was under eating. And so I said, well, I wonder if we could just make a calculator just to kind of enlighten people on, what 4 to 5 CrossFits workouts a week look like from total daily energy expenditure.
Like how much fuel is going to take to actually meet that demand.
And so for, your average 135-pound woman, CrossFitting 4 to 5 days a week, they were finding that their calories need to be 2,400, 2,600 calories, and then they knew that instinctively they were eating 1,500 calories. And so what the calculator was there for is just a wake-up call. It wasn't like meant to be, I'm going to meticulously eat this amount of food every single day and with absolutely no direction. Like, I did not want to do what we started out the site without some level of support. And when you read a lot of these books, you don't have the ability to talk to the people who write this material. People can talk to me on a daily basis. Doug sees that, in the group, in the science lab. Mike Nelson is answering questions. Julia Ladusky's answering questions.
So what's happening in these groups? Like, what kind of so the people, they go to the website, they find the calculator, they start calculating their stuff. It's a wake up call. They join the group. They get in there, and what's happening in the group that's like helping people out?
Well, like I said, it's very CrossFit in that people are super supportive. One thing that I didn't, when we set up the group. When we first started off, are you
guys giving advice? Or?
Yeah,
okay.
for sure. When we first started off, we had comments on the blog. We had messages, on the Facebook page. And, once we got to like 50,000, that became like super unmanageable. And so I basically shut down all those avenues. And I think at that point we were still just selling carb backloading. And then Mike was just finishing up the metabolic flexibility specifically for, our sports. And so that allowed me to kind of direct everybody just to these people. And I put out a post because my dad and I were talking, and I said, I just find myself having to convince all these people, that they need to eat adequate amounts for athletic activity. And he's like, dude, you don't have to convince anybody of anything. Your journey should speak for itself. And
your dad went all zen on you, which is wise.
Yeah. Well, and he said I saw a bumper sticker the other day.
Those are not the droids you're looking for.
Yeah.
He pulled that move on you. Oh shit, you blew my mind, Pop.
But he says, I saw a bumper sticker the other day, and it said, are you interested or are you committed? And that was one of those moments in the site that it changed my life, because I quit talking to the interested people and I started talking to the committed people. And the committed people, to be honest with you, they either had to buy carb backloading or now they have to buy metabolic flexibility for high intensity athletes.
Well, what do they get if they buy that?
Well, they get to talk to Paul Nobles. That's one of the advantages.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it ends up being a big deal because what we're talking
it's
about.
It's like when people get the chance to talk to us.
Yeah, it's real similar to that. But not just how many times do you buy a book and actually get to talk to the people that are writing this content? It's not often, and so Mike.
Those books aren't expensive either. What do those books cost?
Well, for metabolic flexibility, it's $49.95.
Yeah.
And so, that's not going to be that big of a deal. I mean, Mike, he's made some video comments or content that's real specific to how you would load your carbohydrate. Like I said, the thing about Mike, I think that he works with a lot of clients that come from a deficit background, and so it's been really enlightening for him to see these super athletes, and just how they work. And but the big train conductor is me.
So how's buying the book different than the science lab, or is that the same thing? I'm confused.
Okay,
well, you're easily confused.
That's
in all
true.
fairness.
But so are most people that listen to this.
Oh, yeah.
So
they're as easily confused as me. I'm sure of it.
You represent the common man.
That's right.
The basic concept of metabolic flexibility is loaded carbohydrates around your workouts. Okay, and then Mike takes a topic that is really popular within the group, and he updates that every single month with a lot of science. Mike's a scientist. He actually pokes rats for a living. And so he gives all the scientific references and things of this nature. The first month, we have a lot of women who, believe that they're metabolically damaged. And so he did a really great chapter on metabolic
So if you buy the
damage.
book, do you get access to the group?
Yes, for
Which
sure.
is the science
Is that
lab.
what you were looking for?
Yeah,
And that's the science lab?
that is the
So it's
science.
one and the same.
Yes.
Okay.
You demonstrate commitment by buying the book.
I got
You
it.
buy
You
into
got it
the,
down.
you buy into
I
the
was-
page.
I didn't know it was that the answer was that
Yeah.
simple.
You buy the you buy the book. You get your education. You get into the group. You've already had the wool pulled from your eyes. Now you realize, holy shit, this calculator showed me I'm way off.
Yeah.
So the attempt to close the gap is the 80% benefit I'm going to get initially. And you get into the group, and this guy blows your fucking mind with chapters specific to the comments that are most relevant, and you drill down and get a deeper level understanding. And the whole package gives you a fucking crushing deadlift.
So, so at
we
50
need you for a testimonial.
So at $50
There you
bucks, I get access to this group forever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what. Okay.
Well, because
pretty sweet.
what ends up happening is that the first.
So I'll stop you. I'll make
go
this
ahead.
point, which is great. If you're the kind of person, I'm talking to you, individual who goes $50 for a book. If you don't think changing your body forever is worth $50, you're a piece of shit.
Well, let me just.
Let me be honest with you. If you'll gladly pay $100 for your iPhone every month and not fucking think two shits about that and spend all day on Facebook wasting time with that device, if you don't think $50 to change your life is worth it, you need to not be a part of this race. Move your fucking ass out of our country. You're dragging us down. Seriously, like if you
Getting
don't,
ornery in his old age.
I'm serious, but if you don't think spending some money on yourself to make yourself fucking righteous and better is worth it, I have no respect for you.
Well, what people don't understand is that when I have private clients, which I can't have private clients anymore, other than I make special exceptions for CrossFit Games athletes at this point, but basically I charge people $2,000 a month. And so having the ability to talk to and Mike's costs are similar, Julia's costs are similar. We're high level thinkers as it relates to this type of stuff. And if you want to have personal communication with those people, when somebody, when I charge $2,000 a month, they're going to get my text. They're going to have my cell phone. They're going to be able to talk to me all the time. But usually, most of those people kind of figured it out, relatively quickly. I was spending a lot of time working with models and bodybuilders and things like this and taking people from 12% to 5%. And that was not nearly as gratifying as what this has been, And the one thing that I did not account for when we started selling metabolic flexibility was the fact that I thought people would pay to talk to Paul Nobles. They would ask me a question and they would move on their merry way. That's not what happened. It was really like a miracle. They started talking to each other, and when they started talking to each other, they started mentoring each other. We have spreadsheets that people are, tracking their PRs, talking about their meal plans, things of this nature.
We've got that going on in the 26 and 26 challenge where they start coaching each other. The magic starts coming.
Yeah.
We drop in to give our insight and our coaching all the time. And then that is coupled with this community, like where a guy's like, wow, dude, you just motivated me because you posted this video and it looks so great. I'm going to train better. What do you think I'm doing wrong? You do. Like they start going off on their own and doing
the
that.
value
Keeps
is
'em on
not
track.
just in being able to communicate with the coach. The value is also in being in the community.
All right, here, before we
That's
shut down the
something
show, we asked everyone on Facebook, what kind of questions that we should ask you on the show.
Yep.
Our buddy Dan said that he did your calculator and he found out that he was taking in maybe 1,000 calories less than he probably should every day, 100 grams of fat less than he should every day. And for a while there, he was taking in a lot more fat just off the recommendation of the calculator. And he was trying to put like a can of coconut milk in his evening shake and eat multiple avocados a day and crushing nuts. And he could do it for a while, but he just was so full all the time. And he found it really hard to keep up with. Is that a common thing for people that are under eating? They start eating more and it's so overwhelming that they just feel like they're stuffing themselves all day, every day. What do they do? What should they do?
Yeah, well, first of all, what happens with the calculator, especially for like bigger guys, but this happens with women too, and we've actually really geared a lot of our programming. This is kind of the nice thing about being able to change with the group as people are having some difficulty. We found people actually like drinking spoonful of olive oil, trying to meet their fat.
We got a video on that, don't we?
One of our first videos ever.
Gross.
Yeah, and it's
Shots of olive oil.
and it's like, no, that really isn't the goal. we did start to, what everybody wanted to do was they wanted to put in a real low carb number and then solve for fats. That's the way the calculator works, is that you can put your protein either at lean body mass, you can put your protein at 1 gram per pound. You can actually add.
Shit!
We lost some lighting there. And then you can add protein. What people wanted to do is they wanted to do our approach low carb, and so but maybe that wasn't Dan's scenario, but it will speak to that. So they would put in 100 grams of carbohydrate, and they'd be like, "Holy shit! I'm supposed to be eating 268 grams of fats."
It's got to come in somewhere, so they're trying to add the fat.
Yeah,
and
and
that are crazy.
Right, and so what we actually just put out some guidelines within the calculator that said for women, you probably want to try to solve for carbs by putting in your fat numbers. And so for if you're a smaller woman, we have them start at 75 grams and then 100 grams if you're for most women. And then for men, usually comes in between 125 grams and 150 grams for fats. And then, what they find is that if their protein numbers are, 1 gram per pound, their carbohydrates usually come in somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 grams, 300 grams, and it's a much more reasonable approach. And so we've had to coach people. We've had to put out some articles. That's the nice thing about being able to pivot as people are starting to have trouble, and that's the problem with buying a book that is a system. This is the way you're supposed to do it. And in general, whatever you do, you should be able to have at least some level of communication with the diet author. That's why we tried to support carb backloading in the beginning, because there was a lot of CrossFitters doing it. And we just found that the better approach was just to write our own damn book.
Is this Dan from our gym?
Yeah.
Oh, he's really lean.
Yeah.
So, you probably just want to drop your fat and up your carbs.
Yeah.
So
well,
don't be scared
you would probably
to eat lots
feel,
of carbs.
You'd feel a lot less full, and it'll up your appetite if you.
Well,
do
it'll
more
up your
carbs.
metabolism.
Oh.
Do we hit that one? That's acceptable answer.
Yeah.
Second question.
Let's do the next question.
Yeah, we got more questions. Let's see.
All right.
If I want to eat like a high level competitor, how should I eat? Can you sum that up in like 4 sentences? Like super concise.
I don't think I can do anything in 4 sentences.
I don't think so either. That's why I'm challenging you. Challenges work well, you said.
In your mind, you're going to write a PowerPoint slide. You get 4 bullets.
Yep.
And if you exceed the 4 bullets, we punch you in the dick right now.
Okay. I think I got this. Eat adequate amount of calories.
Like I'm a fucking fist clenched right now.
Eat adequate amount of calories. That's my first bullet point.
You got 3 more bullets.
Okay. My second bullet point is load your carbohydrates around your workout.
So far, so good, homie.
Beautiful.
Okay. Your third is monitor your stress levels and get adequate rest.
That counts. That's 3.
Okay.
Good job. You wanted to explain more.
No.
You
I'm good.
put that period, the hard stop there. Good job.
I'm good. I'm actually even struggled to have a 4th, but I think that. Yeah.
4.
Monitor stress levels and sleep.
4. Train.
I just don't know that it's more difficult than that, right?
Number 4.
Eat
Slam
adequate
bar.
amounts. Have carbohydrates
If you can sum it up
around
in
your
3
workout.
points, that's great.
Let's do it.
Point 4.
I think that's it.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Add in slam bars, crush PRs from our buddy John. That's a good 4th one. Fuck the bar up in the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Fucking high five to you, man. That's good. Put that on an actual PowerPoint slide. Sell it.
$50.
$50. $10. Whatever. Exclusive content.
Doug can make it look fancy. He's good at making PowerPoint
Doug
slides
is-
look fancy.
Fiddling with the iPad, searching for that.
You know
perfect
who
question.
has the best
Oh, one of
PowerPoint
the-
slides in the world is Andy Galpin, Dr. Andy Galpin at Cal State.
They're very interactive.
Yeah.
Just so you know, one thing we haven't actually talked about is that in the science lab, you have the ability to conversate with all of us, but I do seminars online virtually every day. We have 4 to 5
Webinars?
Yep. And
Every day?
Yep. And basically 30 to 40 people show up and they ask me questions.
What do you
and
do it on? Do you
use
have like content
WebEx.
Just
set,
Google
or
Hangout?
do you just let people ask questions, or do you have like a
We
topic
just-
of the day?
No, I mean, in general, a lot of times Julie and I will kick it about, some strength training topics or things of that nature.
You just use GoToWebinar or something?
I use WebEx, which is a Cisco product.
So people just log in.
Yep,
They log into WebEx,
send them the link.
and you hang out and answer questions.
Yep, and actually we tape it on Google Hangouts. So like right now you can go to youtube.com.
Google uses tapes?
Yep, slash.
It's just a way of describing it, dummy.
But like /E to perform, and you can watch all the seminars that we've done since day one, and it's usually pretty enlightening.
Oh, that's cool.
We got to do a lot more of that shit.
All right, here, last question. What supplements would you prescribe to someone who's trying to train specifically for performance in CrossFit?
Well, I'm a big fan of creatine. I've written a lot about creatine. I think that's something that's been well researched. And
at this point, if you're somebody who gives two shits about your muscle function, your performance, and maybe your long-term neurological health and well-being, you just gotta fucking take creatine. Everybody should be taking it, right?
Yeah, I think that
at least a 5 gram scoop, but maybe you want to play with these hyper doses, 20 grams, 30 grams.
See, I don't think 20 grams is a hyperdose, to be honest with you. I haven't really seen any problems with it.
Well, maybe hyper to the guy who's usually like, well, yeah, I'll take the recommended dose. Like it's more than what people think they should take.
If you're a CrossFit athlete, I don't see why you wouldn't be doing beta alanine right now.
That's the second one, yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, beta alanine is almost like made for CrossFit. It what breaks down.
It's like if you're gonna even go to the trouble of buying neon shoes, you better be taking fucking beta alanine.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is sort of interesting. How many people in our community have a $50 jump rope? How many have $139 customized nanos, and they go, "Oh, I think your book's too expensive." It's like
it's bullshit.
Screw
like,
you.
Look what you're doing in your life.
You actually get to talk to me about it.
I love Mike Workington's article on CrossFit Journal. I like Mike. Worked with him a little bit, but he put that article like, if you're spending time about your sleeves, your calf compression shit, and you're forgetting like, look, I just need to snatch and squat more, you're losing the fucking point of what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys, I think it's about time to wrap it up.
Super.
So I'm going to let you guys do your plugs.
We should even there's probably a lot of questions from this, and we should maybe throw out
might be like a
click this link. We'll do like an afterglow, ask us some more questions. We'll dig back into this one or something.
We're super deep. We're super
we won't
deep
do that
into
shit.
this.
I'm just saying maybe we will.
People want to make it more
cool if we did.
complicated, but remember, it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
points.
Doug will set the example for how to plug. So
Yeah, he's running out of battery life, I think. So we just opened up the next round of the 6-month muscle gain challenge that started 2 days ago. So that only has 50 spots available. Like I said, we have about 200 people on that waiting list right now. So last time it filled up very quickly, and we had to shut it down before the actual scheduled end date. So if you want to get into that program, go sign up as soon as possible. You can sign up, go to barbellshrugged.com, click on the shop, go to online coaching, and then click on the 6-month muscle gain challenge. As part of that course, you get access to the Faction Foods Nutrition course and to Maximum Mobility, which the value of those courses is over half the cost of that total program. Plus, you'll get access to me, Mike, and Chris in that Facebook group on a daily basis to watch videos of your lifts.
And we watch that shit.
We do. We watch all the videos on there. We make comments. We help people with their weightlifting technique. We help people with their nutrition. And really any other questions you have full access to us. So really, it's $100 a month for 6 months, and that's ridiculously cheap for the value that you get through that program. So everyone that's doing it right now is just thrilled with it, and they're making fantastic progress. So we're excited to start the next one. And like I said, that opened 2 days ago. If you're watching this on Wednesday when this episode comes out, so if you're watching this right now, you want to get into that program, go ahead and go over there, get signed up ASAP. That way you get in without it being filled up, and you have to wait till the next one.
All right, Paul.
Super. Well, we don't really have a whole lot of. We plugged it the whole show is metabolic flexibility for high intensity athletes. We have a challenge each month where athletes try and make a decent sized gains, focusing specifically on one lift. And then on August 1st, we're actually going to start our version of what is the Paleo Challenge option, because I feel like paleo challenges as they exist where people are going for super calorie deficits for 30 days and just sucking it up is sort of broken, and we're trying to come up with an answer for that. And so that'll happen on August 1st.
So what website do we go to for that?
Just Eat to Perform. I've already put out. Yep, I've already put out a couple posts. We're actually using Fitocracy for for the 1 month challenges where you're just trying to PR. So
Cool.
yeah.
Photocracy.
All right, Chris, what you got?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and request everybody go on iTunes, go on Amazon, either those two places, type in Progress and Chris Moore, and you're going to see my book come up. Take a look at the free previews. Check it out. The book is out. If you like it, download a copy, and please leave your commentary as a review. I'm confident that you'll probably want to offer a 5-star review because everybody who's read this really has. A guy last night told me it was an exquisite read.
If you
he wasn't bullshitting.
If you don't leave 5 stars, don't bother.
Yeah, I mean, I think you will want to. I think you'll like it. So please check it out. Leave a good review if you want. It's like $4.99 on Amazon and iTunes. It's a low barrier entry. I think it'll really help you get through some issues in terms of deciding what you want out of training.
And it just made the iBooks, so I'll be downloading it. Yeah,
it's available on iPad for iBooks, and then anything that'll play. And you can have your Kindle app on your iPhone, your iPad, or Kindle. That Amazon app will allow you to download from Amazon. We don't have an iPhone option yet, but if you just download the Kindle free the Kindle free app, download the book, you're good to go. You're gonna love it.
Cool.
Check it out.
I want you guys to make sure to go to barbellshrugged.com, sign up for the newsletter. That way we can inform you of all the stuff we have going on. We have some workshops, some training camps going on at different gyms. If you sign up for those newsletters, we'll send you information on how you can get signed up for those. We got one coming up in Atlanta and another one in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area there in Miramar. So
CrossFit Bound and then CrossFit Siege.
CrossFit Siege and CrossFit Bound, yep. So if you're interested in seeing us live and letting us coach you on weightlifting, nutrition, mobility, all the stuff that we like to try to specialize in, you should show up to one of those. So also go to iTunes, leave us 5 stars if you like this podcast, and see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Live sexy.